Hi, I'm Ven. Welcome to my book corner. This is my wrap up for June of 2026. We have 6 books we're going to talk about today. June was a bit of a mixed month overall, but we're going to go over each of the books individually before I go over my stats at the end of the video and where I'm up to year to date. So let's just dive straight in. Up first, then, one of my most highly anticipated books of this year. This is the sequel to Whispers of the Storm, Rising Gale by Z.B. Steele. This continues the tale of Redlin of the Wolves, self-narrating his own life to an Inquisitor, and the narration takes place straight after the end of Book 1, and the fallout from the confrontation that happened there, and some revelations that happen at the end of that book as well. And more stuff gets revealed throughout this, including the fact that Redlin is not particularly happy with being the chosen for a certain god at a certain point. This deals quite a lot with, in many ways, a lack of trust for those around them, almost like abandonment issues in Redlin's case as well. An interesting carry forward from book 1 as well, but also this sort of level of, I want to say self-belief, but arrogance sort of fits it a little bit more, and the fall that comes with that as well. In many ways, Redlin does remind me of Fitz from the Farseer trilogy, in that this is a character that just when you think things can't get any worse, they do. Over and over and over again. One thing after the other. And at one point, Redlin is really, really brought low and has just the slither of a chance of a normal, happy life, and you just know it's not going to happen. There are some interesting things within this, though, which I was looking for this time around in terms of, is Redlin a good narrator for his own life? Is he a trustworthy narrator? And absolutely not, is the conclusion that I have come to. There's a number of things in here where we're going through Redlin's retelling of his own history, and there's these weird tonal shifts, or certain things feel like they're being hidden away or deliberately not said, which gives the impression that this is, as much as it is a retelling of his story, it's also a manipulation of the people around him in the present day. And I like that a lot. And for me, actually, the highlights of this are the present day scenes and the conversations between himself and his interrogators, which I think are really, really well handled and a truly shocking, in many regards, and kind of blindsided me a little bit, occurrence at the end of the book, set in the present day, has me really, really intrigued for what the next step in this world is. We also get a load of world building in here. We get some great character moments with some of the people whose lives Redlin kind of passes through. There's a lot less time with the side characters in here because Redlin is very much becoming that lone wolf style of character, at least at this stage of the retelling. And whilst the characters that we meet in here are well fleshed out, especially following on from book 1 as well, you don't get as much one-on-one time with as many of these for large periods of the book. The ones we do get to meet that are new, they're really interesting as well. I'm curious to see how they come back. I gave this a 4.75 stars out of 5. This is my book of the month. It was also my first book of the month, so everything else had a lot to live up to. The second book of the month was Blessed is the Link. This is book 2 in the Bit trilogy by Sheri Singerling, which has only just come out. This was just like Rising Gale. This was an arc. This one through Book Sirens, as was book 1 at the start of the year. This takes place 20 years after book 1, with Lenore, who is one of our primary characters in this, living in the shadow of the parents Fenrir and Soap, who are the main characters from book 1. And you very much get the sense of that generational shift here. The parents tried to make a better world, and the daughter doesn't really see that with their own lived experience, what they're seeing within the world. And there's an interesting dichotomy here of, regardless of good intentions, how often the world doesn't really change that much for people at the bottom of the pyramid, so to speak. However, it becomes clear that after cleansing the rot from the link in book 1, there are other nodes to this link, and it's decided to set off and to safeguard the sort of purity of the link where they are now, to go and purify another one. Now, book 1 was set largely in the UK. Book 2 you go over the sea. And it's really interesting seeing how two different cultures have adopted very, very different, if still quasi-religious approaches to the rot of the link that was so prevalent in book one, as we travel to France in the case of this one. And the sheer cultural differences and how they kind of embrace the link still. It's not this thing to be feared. The anomalies aren't this thing to be feared, even though perhaps they should be. It's really, really interesting. It does beg the question, who is right here? There are some really, really dark moments in here. There's some really, really gruesome moments as well. Fenrir in particular has some really, really emotionally catastrophic scenes late on in the book. And this is an interesting second step. It doesn't land quite as well as book one for me. It does fall a little bit at times into that book two trap of a trilogy. However, the way that this ends, I'm really curious to see if book three is another time jump and how that evolves, because at the end of this book, our characters are all in very, very different places to how they start off. And there's a definite impression of something else working in the background here. I have some suspicions what's going to happen in the third book. I'm excited to see if I'm right, or more likely, how wrong I am. I gave this a 3.75 stars out of 5. Very, very solid follow-up. Fascinating world. Can't wait for book 3 later in the year. Sometimes you read a book and you wonder why you read it. Now, I gave this book a 4.25 stars out of 5. This is Spider by Janelle Schieke. This is my second book by the author, following the amazing Clatterman last year, which is actually referenced in this on a side point. This is a novella coming in at 146 pages that released earlier this year. And this is really, really, really creepy. Our main character of Jenna is not especially likable. However, they have a number of issues, especially with spiders. And as you can tell by the title, spiders are pretty central to the themes of this one. This does some really, really good body horror. It also plays really, really nicely with that idea of where did that thing just skitter off to. Now, I am also arachnophobic, which is why this hits quite hard for me. If you're not arachnophobic, it might not work quite as well, but there is a level of creep of where's it gone, and there's a couple of scenes in here, one involving eyeballs, because of course it is, it always involves eyeballs. Why not involve eyeballs in horror? Which made me feel genuinely queasy, and the ending as well. Yeah, this isn't a happy ending, which I appreciate in a horror book. Too many horror books have our heroine wander off into the distance, all unharmed and happy, or more or less anyway. This doesn't. I genuinely think that Schieke may be one of my favourite indie authors, especially in the horror space right now. I do have Death Cult to read, which I may try and read for Don't Die July. I've had that for a little bit. I think there's another book as well that they've done that's out as well. But I really do recommend Spider. I read this in one day. Does some really, really smart body horror. Really enjoyed it. Enjoyed is the wrong word. This made me feel ill in a good way, like a good book should do. 4.25 stars out of 5. If you're taking part in Don't Die July, I think you could do a lot worse than read this one. The next one is a bit of a rarity for me. We have a non-fiction book. This was a buddy read with the amazing Margaret Pennard. Link down below to Margaret's channel. Please go and check her out. She's absolutely phenomenal. An amazing indie author as well. If you like historical fiction, check out her books. They're really, really good. And that's from somebody who is not a massive fan of historical fiction per se. However, this was a buddy read, which we've both done. This is The Trading Game by Gary Stevenson. I listened to the audio book of this one, which Gary themselves narrates. If you don't know who Gary Stevenson is, he has his own YouTube channel. You can check it out, where he talks about a number of economic things. Don't want to go into too much detail here. And this is basically his memoir of his time, first off coming up through the back end of school and managing to get a scholarship, basically, to college, university, I should say, to get into the world of economics, specifically in terms of trading. And this is really, really interesting because what this really does highlight is almost like a class divide here, because Gary is from a very, very working class background in East London. Very, very much atypical for this sort of working environment, shall we say. And a lot of what this does is kind of reinforce what my feelings are towards trading and shareholders and all that sort of side of finance in general, which is that this is a gambling racket for rich people a lot of the time. But this does cover his experiences as that. And what's really interesting here is how desensitized at times Gary became to money and to life in general, and how it became an obsession and the burnout that he went through. Now, I will say Gary does come across as a bit of a knob in a lot of this book. There's some really interesting larger-than-life characters as well, which at times I do wonder how much sort of narrative flair they're given rather than accuracy. However, I do get the impression that a lot of traders do have that sort of bombastic, larger-than-life, pretty aggressive at times personality. That kind of does fit in my own personal narrative of how I've seen them anyway. And it was actually a really, really interesting listen. The audiobook, he does a number of voices as well. Generally speaking, most of his accents are pretty good. There's the odd one that makes you go a bit at times, maybe a bit problematic, but there we go. But this was actually a genuinely interesting book to listen to, especially considering where he is now in life and the sort of flip in how he sees the economy and stuff like that, because obviously the idea of being a trader is to make money by playing off the economy, whereas now a lot of the stuff that he advocates for is very much the opposite of what he was doing at the time. I'm not going to say anything more on this. I did give this a 3.75 stars out of 5 as well. I will be discussing this live over on Margaret's channel on July the 6th. I will drop a link down below to that live stream or the video as it goes up. So if you want to listen to my live thoughts, as much as I ever have any, feel free to tune in. I'm sure it'll be a really interesting chat. It's always fascinating discussing these things with Margaret, because we quite often come from very, very different directions to things. But that's our first non-fiction book of the year, everyone. Might be our first non-fiction book for 18 months, so happy days. After those two books, I needed a bit of a palate cleanser, so I've dived back into the Guides for Dating Vampires series. This is a series that I first touched on within my first year on BookTube, and it was my first video that did any numbers and is still one of like the top 5, I think, on the channel, and that is how to fight your neighbour and win a wager. This one is set before that. This is set in the 90s in Los Angeles, the stars and the stage. So this follows our main character, Diego. Diego is non-binary. They have transitioned from female to male, and they had a high school sweetheart who really, really likes them. However, when Diego was turned into a vampire, things went a little bit wrong. Not from Diego's point of view, but from the other half's point of view, who was very much in the vampires are bad category. And in the end, after being rejected by their lover and their family, Diego ran away. And we rejoined Diego in the 90s in Los Angeles, working in a sensual role-play club, basically, for vampire and human couples. And everything's going really well. They're comfortable in themselves. They're happy with their life when the ex walks in after a decade. And all those feelings of grief and hurt and hostility come back. The other half, or the ex, I should say, seems to generally want to make amends and feels genuinely sorry for what they do and misses Diego so much. Diego doesn't trust them at all and makes their life a living hell. And it's tortuously brilliant to see this relationship kind of get rekindled, but from a point of extreme negativity, and begin to kind of flourish in spite of itself until spanners get thrown into the works. I will say the ending of this does feel a little bit rushed. It feels like it needed a few more pages, and actually I would have liked this to have been a full-length novel rather than a novella. However, this was a perfect palate cleanser for me. Once again, DM Brynn does an amazing job with the chemistry of our main characters. Really, really good here. It doesn't quite hit the same level of the characters from Bite Your Neighbour, but that had more pages to play with. Really, really liked this. I do need to dive back into the series proper with book 2, which is How to Sell Your Blood and Fall in Love, which I do have. I will be reading that at some point in the next couple of months. I gave this a 3.75 stars out of 5. This was a perfect palate cleanser, an LGBTQ plus romance as well. Exactly what I needed after the previous 2 books. Now, sometimes we take book recommendations from people and wonder what the fuck we were doing. The Ritual by Shantel Tessier, narrated by Aiden Snow and Meg Sylvan. This is book 1 in the Lord series. I gave this 2 stars. And it got 2 stars because actually on a technical level it's solidly written and the narration is decent. I'll touch a little bit more on that at the end, but I don't understand. So this was recommended to me by a customer at work, first off. I never want to see them ever again in my life. And a fellow colleague at work as well who really likes this book. They don't like the other books as much, which is fine. I'm not going to read them because this broke my brain. And in fact, the first thing I asked them after completing this book was, what is wrong with you? Respectfully. Because she scares me. Even more after reading this book. So, this is set in a basically kind of an Ivy League university called Barrington University, the home to a secret society that everybody knows about, so not very secret at all, called the Lords. Lords are some of the most powerful men in the world. And basically, they can at any time be called upon to do the Lord's bidding. Be that murdering people or whatever job they're in at the time, getting people through difficult situations, shall we say. In their senior year, lords are often offered a chosen one, and they get their pick. Yeah, so basically, they get to pick the woman they want, and that woman becomes their property to do with as they please, regardless of consent. And I'm saying consent because there's many times in here where consent is not given. Now, people are free to their kinks whatsoever, but I must admit I do have some issues with the stretch of some of the kinks in this because they don't feel like healthy things. They feel like assault at best. If you're not in a position to give consent because you're unconscious, things shouldn't be happening to you, is as much as I'm going to say about that. This book, I don't understand. Now, it's really, really well reviewed over on Goodreads. I'm never going to read any more of these. I am concerned. Very concerned. In terms of the narration, Meg Sylvan does a really good job. It took a little bit of time for me to sort of work it out in my head properly, but by the probably 30% of the book, I thought the narration was really good. Aiden Snow I've heard before, and I didn't enjoy the narration here as much. It felt like the voice was taken down a few octaves too much, and the pace was slowed too much of the narration as well on his side. And it just didn't quite work as well as previous works that I've heard him narrate. It wasn't bad, just wasn't for me personally. But this is the worst book I've listened to this year. I hated it. Hated every moment of it. And a normal person would have DNF'd this. But apparently I hate myself. So that was my last book completed for the month. In terms of stats then, we completed 6 books, just under 29 hours and 1,157 pages. Now, about 120 of those pages is the book I'm currently reading, which is this one, Cthulhu Private Investigator and Other Stories. I was at 53%, I think, by the end of June. Complete that in the next couple of days. I think I'm down to Devil Takes His Cut in terms of the stories. I think I've only got 3 left. Maybe even 2 left to read. So, mixed bag so far. I'll talk about that at the end of July. But, yeah, emotional was the big one this time around, interestingly enough. And not much that's dark. And I suspect that's going to be The Ritual, yes, understandably, it was horrendous. In terms of pace, most of them have been quite too fast paced, one medium pace. Some of them aren't showing up on there, don't know why. Page numbers, we've got a perfect split. 2 between 300 and 500, 2 under 300. And then same again on audiobook length, 1 under 16, 1 over 16. 1 non-fiction book, 5 fiction books. 3 books came under fantasy, 2 romance, 2 horror, 1 sci-fi, 1 memoir. So a bit of a mix this month. 2-star, 3 3.75 stars, a 4.25 and a 4.75. And as you can see, my reading month was all over the place. Absolutely all over the place in June. Bit of a drop off from the month before, but that's perfectly fine. As for year to date then, we're now up to 40 books completed out of my target of 60, so we're ahead by 10 as of right now. I'm recording this on the 1st. We're ahead by 552 pages. We're on 8,405 year to date. And we're 18.8 hours ahead on 131 hours as well. So we're on track for the year, which is good. What I would like to know from you amazing people, though, is what books have you read in June and what was your favourite? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, shout out, Don't Die July has now begun. There's going to be loads of amazing creators taking part in that. There will be a playlist on the channel, which I will also link down below. Go and check that out. You may find some new favourites on there. It's not all going to just be bookish content as well. But that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I hope you have an amazing July. And I'll catch you all very, very soon.